friends, welcome to this episode of Yarnyheart Fiber Art. My name is Jess, you can find me on Instagram at yarnyheart, and this is the show where I talk about all the yarny things that I've been up to. So, it's 2026, and it's been an absurd amount of time since the last time that I sat down and recorded one of these podcasts. And a lot of times when somebody comes back from a long hiatus, they'll usually come back and be like, oh, I was going through a lot of changes in my personal life, like things are going on. But to be so real with you, the reason why it's been so long is because I actually tried to film a knitting podcast at a very decent time after the last one that I uploaded. And not only did I try to record it once, I tried to record it twice, because both times the footage for the entire podcast that I sat down to record was ruined. So it was pretty demoralizing to the point that I was just like, forget it, maybe it's time to just like quit YouTube or something. And then after that, I did get pretty busy. I went to Korea again with my boyfriend. The holidays, I was sick for a very long time. And that's kind of the story of why we haven't seen each other for a while. But to be honest, I really miss sharing about my knitting, and I really miss kind of like the online knitting community with Instagram and YouTube, because kind of along with that, I did also take a break from Instagram, and that was kind of more of a like mental health boundary setting kind of thing for me. I find myself easily overwhelmed by social media a lot of the time, but I think now, especially with the new year, I find myself craving a lot more of that community again. So here I am again, sharing about my knitting. But because it has been such a long time since I've shared on the podcast with you all, I'm not going to go back and share every single thing that I've knitted since my last podcast like I usually do, just because it's been such a long time and I've been a very prolific knitter in the time that I've been away. So if I were to do that, this would end up being a very, very, very long episode. And I wouldn't want that. I could have done everything I made in 2025, but if I'm also being completely honest, I'm not confident that I actually remember everything that I made in 2025. But I feel like that might resonate true with a lot of you. It's certainly been a tough year. And for me, knitting has definitely been a fallback and a comfort for me during that time. And so a lot of times I definitely feel like I was knitting just to knit. And of course, enjoying and loving the finished objects that I end up with. But I very much didn't do a very good job of chronicling the things that I've knit, or the process or things like I usually had been doing in the form of these podcasts. And so I'm not confident that I'm equipped enough with the knowledge of what I knit this year in order to do a full recap like that. So in order for me to have time to talk about my finished objects, the things that I'm currently working on, and I mean, we'll see how long this recording ends up being, but if I have time to, I might share the acquisitions, because like I said, I went to Korea with my boyfriend this year, and I came back with a lot of yarn. Part of it, knowing that I was coming home to this tariffs situation where it is now harder than ever to procure yarn from overseas or out of the country, where a lot of our yarn comes from. Just stocking up while I was there. Plus, I absolutely love the yarn selection in Korea. Everything is like ridiculously cheap, but also very fun and high quality. But I might end up making a separate video about all of my yarn acquisitions from Korea, just like I did last year. However, this year I don't really have a whole lot of footage from the places that I went, but I can do my best to kind of recap, because I found some new places this year that I didn't go to last year. Anyway, that's a whole lot of rambling before getting into any kind of knitting whatsoever, but I just wanted to say that I'm really happy to be back, and I really hope to get fully back into YouTube, Instagram, posting about all of my knitting in the new year. So yeah. without further ado, let's get into some of the things that I have finished recently. So my most recent finished object is the one that I'm wearing right now. So this is called the There and Back Again cardigan. And it's by Tanya Barley. And I'll post some pictures here of me modeling wearing it. But I loved doing this. This was my travel project in Korea. So on the planes, but then also in the evenings after coming back to our hotel and kind of having our like wind down time, this was the project that I was working on. And I casted it on right before leaving. We were there from December 9th through the 21st. So I cast it on right before leaving, and then I finished blocking it last week. So a little over a month, I think, in terms of working on this. So a bit of the story behind this, because one of my local yarn stores, Uncommon Threads, was always a supplier for La Bien-Aimée. But a couple months ago, they announced that they would unfortunately have to stop carrying La Bien-Aimée yarn, I'm assuming because of tariffs. And so they had a weekend where they were kind of doing like basically a clearance sale for all of their current stock. And so all of their currently stocked La Bien-Aimée yarn was 30% off, final sale, last chance to purchase it from them. And so I purchased a sweater quantity of, I have a ball band around here somewhere. So I purchased a sweater quantity of their confetti yarn, which is so they call it a DK weight yarn, but I like every instinct in my brain was like, this does not feel or look like a DK weight yarn. Like if anything, maybe a very heavy DK, but it feels more like a worsted to me. So I knitted it up at a worsted gauge, and I really like the way that it turned out. I think it worked up very well at a worsted gauge. So that's my 2 cents. If you purchase this yarn, do a gauge swatch, but in my opinion, this is kind of more of a worsted. But it is quite thick and thin also, because this is made with 50% merino, fine merino, 30% Shetland wool, but it's 20% recycled fibers from other La Bien-Aimée yarns. So basically they take their leftover scraps from making all of their other yarns, and then they upcycle them into this yarn and make them into basically like the tweed neps. So it's a very beautiful tweed because it's like a pure rainbow tweed, and it's pilling already, but we'll get into that. But it turns into pretty much a true rainbow tweed, which is very exciting and fun. And then I got this in the granite colorway. Yeah, I fell in love with this yarn. I knew immediately that I had to get it while I had the chance to. I believe this is also a limited edition yarn, so I don't know how long they're gonna keep making this yarn, or if they do like certain production runs of it. Like that would make sense to me since they're making it using the upcycled scraps from other yarns, so they might do like certain runs of it, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's a beautiful yarn. It's very thick and thin because of the nature of how it's made and kind of like the tweediness of it. So it is very thick and thin. So I knew when I bought it, I knew 2 things when I bought it. I knew that I wanted to make some kind of cardigan situation because all of the tweed, I felt like it would be a very good cardigan because with all of the color variants, I felt like you could wear pretty much anything underneath it as your base layer, and it would match some part of the cardigan. You know what I mean? Like there's electric blue, there's yellow, there's burgundy and orange and green and like all different kinds of colors in here. So I was like, this would be a perfect cardigan because you could truly throw it on over everything and it would match. So that was one thing. I wanted to make it some kind of cardigan thing. But second to that, because of the texture of the yarn, I knew that I really didn't want anything like super textured. Like this is such a beautiful statement yarn that I really wanted to find a pattern that would let the yarn speak for itself and kind of let it have its spotlight moment. But then also I figured that something that was primarily stockinette would be a lot more friendly towards the texture variations. And just easier and overall way more pleasurable to knit. You know what I mean? So I spent a little bit perusing cardigan patterns, and I had a couple of contenders, but then I came across this pattern, the There and Back Again cardigan, and I was immediately inspired. Like, I still have so many sweater quantities, for instance, from like last year's Bay Area yarn crawl. I have like things that I've knit that, or things that I have purchased that I like already had plans for. But I was just so immediately inspired by this yarn that I bought it, and I pretty much like immediately cast it on. Like, I bought it, I finished up the thing that I was working on before this one, and then after that, like, this just kind of like jumped to the top of my queue and I casted it on pretty much immediately. But I love it. I really love it. I've been wearing it pretty much nonstop for the past week, like ever since I blocked it, essentially. I've been wearing it for like pretty much every day for a week now. It is pilling a little bit. It's a woolen spun yarn, and it's very lofty and squishy. And it has been pilling a bit, but I've also been wearing it a lot. But I'm also kind of, it's not that bad. The pills, as you can see, are very dark though, which is one thing that makes it noticeable compared to the rest of the cardigan. But you know, it's not a deal breaker. Sweaters are gonna pill. That's just what they do. But yeah, it's super cozy, super warm, and this beautiful, like, the details on this are so beautiful. There's this kind of herringbone stitch pattern on the yoke, and then there's a similar one that goes down the button band here. Yeah, the only thing is I knew that I would be flirting with yarn chicken, but I also knew that based on the sample photos that I would want to knit this significantly cropped from what was being shown in the sample photos, because she has it pretty much at her hips, and I wanted it not quite at my hips, like maybe a little bit before that. But then also knowing myself and knowing that I have a shorter torso generally than most like knitwear models, I knew that I would want to knit it significantly cropped, and I did. I cropped it by I think like 4 inches or something like that. It hits perfectly on me. This is genuinely the perfect length for me. But even still, even with cropping it, I started to get nervous when it came to doing the finishing. So the neck band is the collar is the only thing that I kind of regret, but it was kind of too late to change it by the time I realized that I would have enough yarn, because you're supposed to knit this to I think like 2 inches, and I did like half an inch instead, just because you have to do the collar first before you pick up the button band, which makes sense, that's how most cardigans are. But by the time I got to the collar, I was already a significant amount of the way through my last ball of this yarn. And I was nervous because I definitely needed the button band to be wide enough to hold the buttons, right? And so I was getting pretty nervous about running out of yarn, and so I made the decision to shorten the collar ribbing, just to make sure I had enough. But then by the time I finished the collar ribbing, I had this much left, which I realized would have been like the perfect amount to knit the collar to the correct width. But I mean, hindsight is 2020. I think if I had knitted the collar to the correct width and used literally the last inches of my yarn to do the button band, I feel like I would have been so much more stressed out. I feel like that sacrifice was worth it to preserve my peace of mind. But either way, I really love the way it came out. I don't think it's that much of a deal breaker. I just do kind of, when I look at it, I kind of wish that I had knitted the full length, but like, it's not a deal breaker. I still think it's a very cute cardigan, and I'm going to be wearing it so much before winter is over. I just love that it's called the There and Back Again cardigan. I think also because I was playing so much Tales of the Shire, and I've just been kind of in like the nostalgic, like Hobbity a nostalgic hobbity mood, I think is how I would describe the way that I passed my fall. I think just like knitting, just like a cozy little tweed, woolen spun, neutral colored, like hobbity cardigan, I think was definitely the comfort knit that I needed in these trying times. Part of it too, I realized that I need to add more cardigans to my wardrobe because I really only have like one actual like hard wearing cardigan. And so I'm definitely on a cardigan kick right now, as you will see when I show you what else I'm working on. But I'm just kind of writing it, so we'll see. The buttons are from my local yarn store, Busy Sticks. I popped in person for the first time in ages just to buy buttons, but I wanted to, you know, shop local. But they're really nice buttons. They're like nice wood buttons. I was debating between either of these. There was another shell button that I was considering, but I think in the end I went with the wood ones because I kind of wanted to keep like the cozy warm feel of this cardigan. I feel like the shell buttons might have made it feel cold, but that's neither here nor there, so yeah, that's it. This is my first finished object, my There and Back Again cardigan by Tanya Barley. Okay, so before I get into my other big one, this was a small finished object that I made. Oh my god, they're like so felted already. But I knitted these specifically to take to Korea, knowing that we were going in December and it was going to be cold, and they kept me very toasty warm the whole trip. But they look kind of nasty. Just like a fair warning in advance, they look kind of nasty because I really put them through their paces during my trip. So I think I might need to just give them a little soak soon here. But they did great. They did awesome. So this is a very heavily modified version of the Rabbity mitts and muffatees by Bunny Muff, aka Monazilla. And you can see like if you look at this now the way it is, you're like, oh, she just knitted the mittens. I'm actually really proud of this modification that I did because I followed the design for the mittens, but I modified them in order to be flip-top fingerless gloves. And I feel like, you know, that's not revolutionary, but I am just really proud of the fact that I was able to make these into fingerless gloves with the individual fingers. As you can see, they're like really felted at this point, because they went with me on all of my adventures, but they're a lot warmer because they are felted now. But yeah, so I have an Interweave Knits issue from several years ago that has a pattern for flip top mittens with the fingerless glove holes. And I had that pattern, but it's not really a colorwork design like this. Like there's a very simple colorwork, like kind of more like color block, I guess you could say. If I find a picture of it, I'll like put it right here what that pattern looks like. But I already physically owned that issue. I already physically owned that issue of Interweave Knits. And so I was like, okay, this is gonna be like a stupid ambitious project to try and do, but I think I could take this mitten pattern and combine it with the measurements and the instructions to make these flip-top mittens, and I think I could combine them to turn these mittens into flip-top mittens. And I think it worked great. The math was not exact because the Interweave Knits pattern was using a DK weight yarn. So there were much fewer stitches, and then this pattern by Bunny Muff uses fingering weight yarn, and so I did kind of have to redo the math a bit to get the stitch counts correct for the middle, like for the fingers part. But it turned out great. And then I also made a small modification. I sewed a button right here, right above the cuff, and then I did a little crochet chain loop at the top to be able to just like button it back here for when I want them to be gloves. Yeah, so it was nice. I really like this pattern by Bunny Muff was written very well. I just of course bastardized it for my own means. But I absolutely recommend the pattern because that pattern has instructions for both the mittens and then kind of like, not like with individual fingers, but just kind of like a typical fingerless glove mitt that you will see in a lot of mitten patterns. But yeah, great pattern, really, really cute, and I love the bunny. The yarn that I used for this was Knit Picks palette in the colors Pine Cone Heather and Oyster. I think those are the colors. But as you can see, like they really felted, which is not surprising because it is just a non-superwash wool, and it's on my hands where there's a lot of sweat and friction and everything, so it makes sense that they felted quite severely, I should say. But kind of like I said, like I feel like it's not the worst thing in the world for a glove to felt. Particularly a colorwork glove to felt, because it really locks in the, sorry, I just realized I flipped this inside out off camera, but I flipped it inside out to show you kind of the inside and the floats and kind of how they're locking now. But I feel like when your colorwork felts, I personally like it when that happens because it kind of locks in your floats more and it makes it like not catch on your fingers. Like the first couple of times that I wore these gloves, I had to be really careful, particularly on the thumb, because I usually wear rings. If you're a returning viewer, you've probably seen the rings that I typically wear. I usually have one on my thumb that has a crescent moon, and I usually have one on my, I don't think I've podcasted since then, but I usually have, so the last time that I had podcasted, I used to wear the ring on my pointer finger here, but I got a stacker for it and I moved it to this hand. And so I had both rings on this hand, but particularly the crescent moon one that I wear on my thumb would always hook into the floats in the glove. And so I would always have to be really careful, like maneuvering it into the thumb slot. But after a couple of days in Korea, it felted to the point that it wasn't catching at all. So I'm all for felt your gloves. But yeah, so that's another smaller finished object that I made. But I say smaller finished object, but I think I'm genuinely the most proud of this one just because of all of the like math and like brain work that it took to modify this pattern in this way. So I'm very proud of how this came out. I had a whole extra ball. Okay, I'm back. I just wanted to find my extra ball for my next finished object that I'm going to show you. So my next finished object, I have for like a couple years now really thought it was so cool that like people like knit their Christmas sweaters. Specifically like to have a sweater to wear like on Christmas or during the holidays or like to Christmas parties and stuff like that. And I always thought that was so cool, but I was just like such a poor planner that I couldn't plan ahead to have something knitted in order to have it done by Christmas, specifically for Christmas. So this year, that was one of my personal goals. I really wanted to make a Christmas sweater. And so I knew that we were going to Korea and coming back literally days before Christmas. So in a way, it kind of like helped me plan ahead a little bit more because I knew my deadline was not actually Christmas. My deadline was going to be before leaving for Korea because I knew that I would have no more time to work on it after coming back from Korea. So I finished it in time to wear to Korea. And so I have pictures of me wearing this sweater and I'll put them somewhere wherever I put the other ones. But this is the Snow Globe sweater by Una Kim. It's pretty massive, so I'm gonna try and get it in the frame as best I can. It came out a lot bigger than I thought it would. And like this was one of those cases, you know, I swatch. I'm actually pretty good about swatching, especially these days. I've become pretty good about swatching. But this was like a case where my swatch lied to me so bad, and it grew so much. Like I knew that it would because it's super wash wool, but I was not prepared for how much this would grow, and it's fine. Like, it still it fits me, and it's nice and comfortably oversized, but I think at the amount that this sweater grew, I could have very easily knitted like one size smaller and been fine. I just was not prepared for the amount of growth that it would do. But regardless, it's really nice. And it's also longer than I expected it would be. I think my row gauge was a little off because I'm good at checking my my this way gauge. My horizontal gauge, but I don't really check my vertical gauge, which I probably should, but I'm not as good about doing that because I figure I can just knit it to what it's supposed to be, right? But this turned out quite large, but that's okay. It's long enough to wear with leggings, which is nice. So that's kind of how I'm styling it. I'm kind of styling it more like a tunic, but it's so cute. So let me kind of show you some of the details on this. So it's mimicking a snow globe. It has these really large baubles at the top, kind of like snow. And then there are these pine trees at the bottom, but it's kind of a very like chunky, minimalist take on a pine tree. And so I think it's really cute. And I really enjoy this sweater particularly because it's not so loud and ostentatious that you could only wear it at Christmas. Like, this is very much a sweater that I could wear whenever the weather calls for it, and not feel like I'm making like a very large like Christmassy statement, you know? So it's really nice. So this is a top-down sweater with a pretty typical raglan construction. And yeah, I mean, I feel like there's not much to say about this. There's a whole lot of stockinette. Starts over with a folded over neckline. And you just kind of work down until you get to the trees. I feel like there's not much that I could have done to reduce the length of this though, aside from just knitting a smaller size maybe. Because the motif is written row by row to take up the whole sweater. So now that I say that out loud, I'm like, I think I'm kind of made my peace with it, you know, it's fine. This was Knit Picks Swish Worsted in the colorway Nutmeg Heather. So this is a worsted weight, 100% fine superwash merino. It's very soft, like it's really comfy. It doesn't feel like wool. I mean, it feels like wool, but it's like, I cannot stress enough, it's like baby soft. It's really, really soft. Like it doesn't have any hint whatsoever, that kind of scratchiness that you can kind of get with a more rustic wool. It's very much like a smooth, soft kind of wool. So it's very comfy to wear. But it is kind of pilling. And I mean, granted, I've put this sweater through a lot. This sweater went to Korea with me and also Christmas parties and stuff like that. So, you know, like, I can't blame the sweater for pilling. I've really put it through its paces, but it is pilling quite decently. I wouldn't say significantly, but I would say it's pilling decently to the point that I think I want to take my pill shaver to it already. So yeah, it's comfy. I think one thing also with the raglan, and I think this is just a matter of me and my body shape and body type versus a raglan. I do feel like raglans can sometimes look a little like slouchy or like sloppy on me almost. And I do kind of feel that way with this sweater. Like when I'm wearing it, I do feel a little like unpolished while I'm wearing it. And so I think, you know, going into this, I knew that raglans weren't necessarily like my best fit personally. But I was just really enchanted by the pattern. I thought it was really cute and I wanted to make it anyway. And I think regardless, I'm still gonna get a lot of wear out of it. But I think because of that and kind of like the raglanness of it and the oversizedness of it on my body, I think this is definitely gonna be kind of more of like a cozy kind of sweater for me. Like I could see myself like wearing this around home or wearing this like in more casual settings. On that note, I think next year I'm ready to make like a true Christmas like colorwork yoke sweater. And I think that would kind of give me more of like the polished look that I'm looking for, as opposed to kind of like this slouchy, drapey, like oversized, cozy, chunky raglan. So yeah, but I really like it. It's a really well-written pattern also. So I definitely recommend it if you are looking for a kind of more minimalist winter motif, Christmas-ish holiday motif to add to your wardrobe. I really recommend the pattern. I think for me, more of the issues of this sweater came with the yarn. I think that this might have turned out much differently if I had used a more rustic wool, or if, at the very least, like used a wool that wasn't superwash. I think could have eliminated a lot of the problems that I ran into this with the final fit. But overall, I really like it. And then I know that I just said that a lot of the problems I ran into on that sweater were with the yarn, but I do have a recent cast on. I casted this on a couple days ago, like shortly after I finished this sweater. But also using Knit Pick Swish, I have just casted on the back yoke for a book club cardigan. And you can see, I'm glad it's showing up on camera, because I was kind of worried about using this really dark yarn, because I knew that it would turn out great in person, but I was a little worried about how it would show up on camera and how it would photograph, but it's looking good. So yes, this is the book club cardigan by Starry Nordlund. Everyone and their mother knows about this pattern already, whether you've made it yourself or whether you've just seen it literally everywhere on Instagram. Like, I think it's been like front page of the Hot Right Now and Ravelry for like over a year. But I've always wanted to make this cardigan, and I've always wanted to make it with this yarn specifically, because I bought these two sweater quantities of Swish at the same time. Knit Picks was having a really good sale, as they do. That's always how it happens, right? But I bought these at the same time, and I wasn't yet sure what I wanted to do with the light colored one, but this darker one, and this I believe is the colorway Lost Lake Heather, I bought this with the intention of making the book club cardigan with this specifically. So I know that I had complaints about the yarn in my previous finished object that I just shared, but I think a lot of the problems came from it being an all over stockinette garment at the end of the day. Like, yes, there was a motif, there were baubles and little cable sections and stuff, but at the end of the day, it was pretty much a stockinette garment. And I think one thing that did not work in its favor in terms of the yarn was the fact that the garment itself lacked structure. It was raglan. It was, like I said, all over stockinette. And so I think that's the yarn would have done a much better job if the garment itself had some structure built in. I don't know how else to explain this, but I feel like with the intricate cables and with the moss stitch and just like the overall amount of texture in here, I feel like I'm giving the yarn a chance, because the stitches themselves, the cables and everything, is pulling it together, as opposed to with the Snow Globe sweater, I feel like the stockinette is making it pull apart. If that makes any sense. Like, it feels like it's being weighed down by itself, as opposed to something like this with the cables, I think will, because cables have that tendency to pull together. So I think that once it blocks, I think it'll bloom very well, but I don't think that it will really stretch out a whole lot beyond that bloom. I might be making no sense. I don't know. You can let me know in the comments if I'm making any sense or if I'm just rambling madly. I'm really enjoying it so far. So I just finished my first ball of Swish. This is all that's left of the first ball. And so I figured this would be a good time to kind of pause and give you all a status update before attaching the next ball and continuing on. I just finished the increases for the back yoke, so now I'm at the part where I'm going to be knitting the back yoke straight. It's a surprisingly easy cable, and I casted this on because I was really craving like a cable project, and this is definitely scratching the itch. for a good cable project. But I think the overall, the cable pattern is much simpler than I expected it to be. And for this, like, this big motif cable, I'm actually not even using a cable needle at all because it's a 2x1. And so I'm actually just slipping the stitches and not even using a cable needle. I am using a cable needle for these just for consistency's sake. But yeah, I'm not even using a cable needle for the big one that you would expect to need a cable needle for. But it's going swimmingly, and I'm really excited to have this as a cardigan when I'm done with it too, because like I said, I'm kind of in a cardigan deficit right now. So I'm very excited to finish this, and I'm kind of hoping to finish this like before March maybe, because I'm kind of hoping to be able to finish it at a time in the year when I can still get a decent amount of wear out of it. So that's kind of my hope, but this is how it's going so far. I will keep you posted on updates. Yeah, my book club cardigan by Sorry Nordland. I know I'm late on the train, but I don't know. Things are just taking priority over me casting this on, but I'm so glad to be finally casting it on. So I guess real quick before I get into my last whip update, I just want to quickly show you the progress that I've made on my excavation blanket. This is where I'm at with my excavation blanket. It's just been kind of going along. I still have plenty of yarn, and I just kind of work on this every once in a while. Like, I used to have a goal of like doing one stripe every day, especially since Korea and then coming back straight into the holidays. I kind of fell off of that, but I'm kind of getting back into working on it here and there every once in a while, and I don't really have necessarily like a specific goal in mind in terms of like a date that I want this finished by or anything like that. It's just kind of a background scrap buster for me. I think one thing that is nice about this one though is because it's just garter stitch, it's really easy for me to work on if I need to be like paying attention to something else. Like for instance, if I'm like watching a video or a movie that I am really invested in, or if for instance, like during some of my team meetings where, you know, I can certainly knit, you know, like, but if it's something that I need to actually like pay attention to what's happening, or that kind of a situation, this is a really good one for me to work on because it's just garter stitch. So that's kind of where I'm at with this, but it's turning out really great. I'm not quite at the point where I want to start decreasing yet. I think I want it to be a bit longer than this. That's about like how long we're looking at here in terms of width. And I think it might be ambitious to say this, but I feel like I would want it to be double this before I start decreasing. And I only say that because I have no particular end date in mind for when I want this to be finished by. I'm just kind of working on it to genuinely just to use up scraps. So I think just having this hang out in a little basket that I keep it in and letting it continue to grow, I think I'm definitely okay with that. But just wanted to give you all a progress update on my excavation blanket. So my next whip update is going to be a significant jump in progress from the last time that you all saw it. Been quite a while, but I've actually been working on this a lot. But this is my Harabuji cardigan by Knit. And you can see I've done quite a lot on this. So if you don't know the backstory behind this project for me, so this pattern is called Harabuji. Harabuji means grandpa in Korean. My Harabuji passed away. We're coming up on the 4-year anniversary of his passing. But 2 years ago, I wanted to knit this already, and I had a sweater quantity of this yarn. I was just kind of like waiting to pull the trigger. But then on the anniversary of his passing 2 years ago, I went and visited his grave. And then when I came back home that night, I thought to myself, why don't I just cast this on? Like I have the yarn sitting there. I have the needles available right now, so why don't I just cast it on? And then have this kind of be a little memorial project for him. And so that's kind of what I did. And then my philosophy with this project was to kind of just let it run its course and kind of not force it, not try and finish it very quickly like I do with most of my other projects. I feel like with most of my other projects, I'm not necessarily a monogamous knitter, but I also don't tend to take on too many projects at one time. And I tend to kind of focus very hard on the projects that I am working on in order to finish them in a timely manner. That's kind of the way that I knit overall. But with this particular project, I wanted to just kind of let it run its course. I didn't want to force anything. I wanted to work on it when I wanted to work on it, kind of put it down when I wanted to put it down, and just kind of allow it to be a meditative process knit for me. But I have been working on it a lot lately, not really for any huge particular reason. Mostly I've been having a lot of really good spurts of working on this. And a lot of times when I put it down, I get kind of scared to pick it up again because it is a very complicated pattern with a lot of line by line written instructions, if that makes any sense. I would not recommend this pattern to a beginner. It's quite dense. It's kind of a hard pattern to read, to the point that I'm not confident that I would knit any other egg yolk knit patterns if they're all kind of like this. So I'm always scared once I put it down. I'm always scared to pick it up again because I'm not sure if I'll be able to figure out like where I left off in the pattern. But I did have a period, especially coming back from Korea, I did have a period where like this cardigan was not in a good spot where I could take it places. But this cardigan was in a spot where I could take it places. And so, for instance, when going to visit my boyfriend for the weekend, like I would pack this cardigan to work on instead of this one. Or specifically what it was I was about done with the yarn ball, but I hadn't wound up the rest of my sweater quantity. And so I would bring this cardigan because I just dropped the yarn ball, but because it already comes in bullet skeins, and so it's just it was easier for me to transport at that time. So I've been working on it a lot, and kind of once I got started on it for the first time in a while, I found it pretty addicting and kind of like difficult to stop. I think especially once the split for front and back happened, I think progress just kind of exploded out of me. Because particularly when you're doing, so I guess construction wise, this goes from one sleeve to the other sleeve. You kind of knit it sideways, so to speak. So you start in the round on the sleeve, then you start increasing on the sleeve, and then once you get to this part, you cast on extra stitches and you're knitting it flat. But when you're at this part where it's like full increase and you're just knitting back and forth like this, like the progress is so slow. Like the rows are so long, and I think that was a lot of what stalled my progress on this. But then, like I said, like once you separate for front and back, the panels are much shorter and it makes it a lot more rewarding to knit in a way. But now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm also feeling still that burst of inspiration to work on it. Because I think when you're on this side, it's very daunting, but when you're on this side, you can see, like, you've already done this one, so you understand the amount of work that it will take, but you can like see the finish line, you know what I mean? So I have been working on this a lot. I'm pretty confident that I will finish it this year. I'm not sure if I want to really, because the anniversary of his passing is coming up once again. I don't think I want to push myself to try and finish it in time for that. But I do have a feeling that I will be finishing it sometime this year. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. The yarn for this is Bergère de France Doucelane in the colorway Hazel. So it's kind of like a dark chocolatey brown. If I remember correctly, this is 80% wool and 20% acrylic. It's kind of what you would see in like a sock wool, similar to that, except instead of like nylon, it's acrylic. So it does still feel very woolly. Like it feels mostly woolly, not really plasticky. So it's nice. I wouldn't necessarily call it rustic, but it's not super soft, which is why I'm glad that it's going into kind of like this cardigan jacket kind of situation. But yeah, it's nice. Well, I think that was already a pretty full podcast, and if I were to do acquisitions, I have a lot of acquisitions, so I think I will save those acquisitions for a separate video, which I promise I will make. But I would love to show you all the things that I bought while I was in Korea and kind of talk about some of the new places that I went this time as opposed to last time, some of the places that I visited again. But I think that would be best left for a different video because this one's already running up against the clock. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for your patience while I was kind of on a very unexpected hiatus from YouTube. I would love to start posting more in 2026. I've definitely been knitting a lot, and I really miss just sharing my updates with the community. And so I would really love to know what your knitting plans are for 2026. Are you trying to turn over a new leaf? Are you finishing up stuff from 2025 still? I would love to know what new things you're casting on for the new year. And I really hope that this footage doesn't get lost, because if it does, I'm going to be unreasonably mad. But if all goes according to plan and you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much for tagging along with me, listening to all the stuff that I had to share with you about knitting and otherwise. I genuinely can't remember how I usually sign these off, so you know what? Like and subscribe. Follow me for more if you like the kind of stuff that I do. Alright, till next time. Bye.